Welcome to Punchline Talks, the business breakfast briefers, where each week I invite a panel of business experts to review the morning newspapers, find out what's happening in their own individual business and their own individual business sectors, and finally, what's caught their eye in this week's Punchline. But before I start, I'd just like to thank our fantastic sponsors, Hayswood's Accountants and Business Advisors. And I haven't got my screen behind me today because I've been waffling too much with all the other fantastic guests I've got. So before I introduce them, I'd just like to say, if you like the show, please like, share, and subscribe. Right, let's get on with the panel. We have Geoff Burch. He's a TV presenter, motivational speaker. He's a retail guru. He's an author of a number of books, including, I've got a big list here, The Where the Dog, Irresistible Persuasion, Self-Made Me, Writing on the Wall, Resistance is Useless. And he's also star of the television show, Go It Alone. Great to see you again, Geoff. Thanks for coming along. We got David Jones, MD of Cheltenham-based property and planning consultants Evans Jones. They employ 17 staff in their Cheltenham base, turnover of 1.2 million. And he's just completed an epic bike ride of 206 miles in 3 days. I don't know how he does it, but I'm sure we'll hear about that. We also got today, first time on the show, we got Simon Monahan. I said it right earlier. I said it right earlier, didn't I, Simon? How do I say it?
Perfect earlier.
Oh, I know I did.
Monahan.
Anyway, he's the managing director of Sarah De Silva. They've been going for 8 years, got a turnover of £1 million. We'll find out all about that later on. And finally, never last but least, we got Amanda Toner. She's the inspirational officer and director of Incito Group. She holds the franchise with her husband for Gloucestershire. They have 1,400 staff across 8 sites, including 5 in Gloucester, 2 in Cheltenham, 1 in Stroud, and a turnover of 4 million. And I was eating there the other day.
40.
But 40, sorry? 40 million. What did I say?
Oh.
Yeah, I think you'd be on a loss if you were only 4 million with 1,400 staff. Anyway, nice to have you on the show. Thanks ever so much. I will get this stuff started. Right, so let's see what's making the headlines, guys. So we've got, hold on a second, I'll just quickly show my, oh no.
What are you doing?
What am I doing today? The BBC has disappeared. Hold on, I'm just going to quickly go in there.
I'm impressed with the tech box, so good for you.
Yeah, this is
Thank you very
impressive.
much.
This is stunning.
Thank you.
But, there we go. Gone again.
You know what? I had the PC crash earlier on me. This is the thing, isn't it? Look at it. Nothing's turning around. Anyway, right. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do the papers at all. I'm going to crack on with what you guys have got. Geoff, what have you picked up the newspapers today, please?
Yes. Well, I've got the daily papers right here, but I'm going to kick off with my favourite publication, which is Private Eye, which has just come out. And I don't know if you remember, but many years ago, Spitting Image had this wonderful joke of Margaret Thatcher in a bar with all her cabinet. And she just says to the waiter, "I'll have raw meat." And the waiter says, "What about the vegetables?" And she says, "They'll be having the same as me." and Private Eye have said, historic jokes revisited. And there's a picture of our current cabinet, including beloved Rishi. And somebody is saying there's a shortage of vegetables, and he's saying, "Not in my cabinet," which is absolutely classic. Which brings me to this thing of a kind of roundup of all the headlines, which is a thing of hindsight. MI5 have been told off because they should have stopped the arena bombing. Matt Hancock is in all sorts of hot water because he's revealed that he cocked up the shutting of the schools, and what else has happened? There's a sort of Sue Gray shouldn't have found Boris guilty of being a complete cock because she's now going to help run the Labour Party. And all I would say about all of those magnificent headlines is that it's all very well to look back, but even an incompetent half-wit like Matt Hancock was probably trying to do the best he could at the time. I can't believe that if MI5 knew for sure that there was somebody wandering around with a bomb, they wouldn't have stopped them. And I think Sue Gray probably acted perfectly fairly. So the papers are all raging and fulminating about all the things in the past that people should have done. But like, you know, that's probably the most annoying phrase in the world is should have. You know, you should have, you know, I should have bought some Bitcoins 20 years ago and flogged them last year, but I didn't do either of those things. So
probably
really,
why you're still on the circuit, Geoff. That's what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. All the things that we should have done. And then I always turn straight to the business pages where I can't really understand the world at the moment. When we get through to Punchline later on in this, I will actually sort of expand on the fact that the sort of business world that is a bit strange at the moment, because it does look like asset values in the shape of houses, gold, and all that are now dropping slightly, but the share prices and so on are going up. And there's no explanation for that at all, except that the direction seems to have changed yet again. But what that means for us mere peasants who are trying to make a living in the business world, I don't know. But it does look like the various stock markets are strengthening and so on. But businesses are still struggling. So there we are. That's my look at the papers.
I think it depends on the sector that you're in. To be honest, there's still a lot of people making money. If you're in the defence sector, you're going to be making money. If you were dealt with PPE, you made money during the COVID. I always think there's someone always making money for people.
Well, you know, I took to my terrible sadness and disappointment. Both of my sons turned to the bad. I tried to make them rock stars when they were kids. I bought them electric guitars and everything, and they said, "What are these for, Dad?" And I said, "Well, you know, you can't be a rock star with it. We don't want to be rock stars. We want to be solicitors." And they both are. And one of them is a tax lawyer in the Cayman Islands. And they don't sell toilet paper there. They just use £50 notes. It's easier. You know, it's unbelievable. You have to wade. Like we have autumn leaves here, you're waist deep in money there. You know, it's just a different world.
I'm going to have to stop you there. I'm going to have to thanks ever so much for going over the papers. I'm going to go over to Amanda. Amanda, thanks for joining us today. So
Hi.
What have you picked out from the papers for us today, please?
So the things I've had a look over the week, and there's a bit of a theme that's cropped up. And today there's an article in the Times about every 500 steps, what I'm reading, walked in old age reduces heart disease. But there's been a few consistent things this week, and I feel there's been an expectation laid down. Just about we cannot keep giving out opiate drugs when they look at how long people have been on antidepressants and things like that for, it's not checked. And just articles about there must be another way, this is bad for people's health. And the reason particularly the article on Wednesday I found interesting in the Times is because there's been a programme done in southern Gloucestershire, which have done a real proper commitment to looking into recommending that people do something other than take a drug. So do some gardening, go for a walk, join an art class to see if that will improve or reduce this kind of these lonesome feelings. And I just think it's quite an interesting take that the papers are drip feeding this concept of every little helps, as we say, that great phrase from Tesco. But even if you're walking 300 steps, it's better than doing none. And just trying to push back onto individuals a little bit, this responsibility. You look at David who's done his amazing bike ride, this responsibility for your own health. So there's another 2 articles in the paper today about different health things, and I think that's quite interesting. I feel there's a little things being putting at every time, how you can try, what you can do, how you can help yourself. And in our business I see that a lot.
Are you one of these people that pulls out all those special supplements that are in the papers, like healthy eating and sports, do these certain exercise? I mean, Simon looks like he does, but I personally don't. But are you one of those people that does that?
I'm definitely not healthy eating, because I believe I'm quite French in attitude that I feel like a little bit of what you fancy does you good, a little bit of it. With exercise, I like the idea of a little bit of something can make a difference. So it's always better to do something than nothing. I've got lots of friends who are, I feel, bores about it, who are just, that's all they talk about. But I think as part of your life, it's just, and I think as you get older, you need to just prioritize it a bit, not because you're doing something, just because you're self-care. So I've changed my attitude to things, but I find it interesting the way the papers are now reporting on it and seeing the benefit that we've all known for ages. It's quite nice to go for a walk, or quite nice to, hang out with your friends.
All right, thanks ever so much for that, Amanda. I'm going to go over to you, Simon, as we talked about healthy living. Simon, thanks ever so much for joining us today. So, what have you picked out from the papers?
Nice little segue. It's something similar related to health and lifestyle and things like that. It's a story from the Citizen, the Gloucester Citizen. It's in regards to GL1 and that there's concerns raised over the impact of utility bills at the sports sites. Obviously, with the rise in energy costs that everybody's experiencing at the moment, whether you're a big business, small business, or you're just somebody that lives at home, running a leisure centre and keeping a swimming pool up to temperature, I'm sure is very, very expensive currently. And obviously GL1 is something I go swimming regularly. It's one of the things I do to get out of the house and obviously get away from the business for a while. And it's a great local resource for the community. And I think it's very important that, that particular story, that doesn't go the other way, that the swimming pool cannot afford to stay open, because I regularly go in there in the mornings at 6:30, 7 in the morning, and it's full of local residents, mainly people, maybe pensioners, older people, and they use it as a social outgoing, and they go there, and that's their little bit of exercise in the day. And I think it's very important that it remains there. And
I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to take the small person swim training. He's the Gloucester County champion, and trying to find a pool to train is getting harder and harder because the schools are shutting their pools as well.
Well, this is it, and gyms have struggled. All businesses have struggled with the rising cost of energy, and especially in the hospitality trade. We've really got to try. I don't know if you've noticed as well how a lot of pubs and restaurants aren't open Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday now, or they're sort of slimmed down.
Leisure centres should be like a community thing. They shouldn't be like, it's the health and fitness of the community is something that should be a given, not something that's optional.
I totally agree. Simon, have you picked out another story at all? Got anything else?
Yeah, for another one, it's a bit of a feel-good story. No bad news this morning from me. It's a recently retired Stella. So Stella was a Gloucestershire police dog who's now coming to retirement, and I'm just a big fan of dogs. I think they're just amazing creatures, and as human beings, we've an awful lot to learn. Unfortunately, I live in a flat, so I can't own a dog. So I sponsor a dog at the Dogs Trust. I send £13 a month. So it was just a story that resonated with me. I think it's a lovely story to start the day off reading. So
okay, well, thank you.
I don't want to bore you with the story, but she's basically caught a lot of criminals and detected a lot of drugs, etc., etc. So had a brilliant career.
No, well, thanks ever so much for that, Simon. Well, let's go over to David now. Hey, David, nice to see you again as always.
Hi, Mark. Love to see you and everyone else.
So, what have you picked out from this for the papers, please?
I'll probably follow on the health theme very briefly. As you mentioned, I've just done a charity cycle ride from Cheltenham to Holyhead, 206 miles. But what disturbed me rather, I then caught the ferry from Holyhead to Dublin and watched the Ireland France game in the Six Nations. But in the Sun, they report that for a pint of Guinness, one needs to take a 46-minute bike ride or walk 5,480 steps. So I did a quick calculation whilst we were talking there. I think it comes out at 22 pints of Guinness I cycled. And boy, did I make a good effort to replenish.
I was going to say after cycling all that, you must have a few good many Guinnesses to celebrate.
there was a little bit of rehydration, shall I put it that way? So, but I do agree with Amanda. There is a general theme of, walking more, exercising more, lowering risk to over 70s as an article. So yeah, all following a very, very similar theme, and disturbing probably how much one does have to walk or cycle to burn off those calories. Turning to sort of my own area, a couple of things. Taylor Wimpey reporting quite a significant downturn in sales. So they had been averaging last year about 0.66 home sales per week. That's dropped to about 0.4.
Wow.
So that sort of echoes certainly in my planning world, the sort of anecdotal evidence that I'm seeing, and certainly the sort of economic turmoil at the end of last year, caused some panic amongst buyers, both in the sort of commercial land buying section and obviously residential house buyers. So we're still seeing the outcome of that work through business and certainly house builders. So I think we're going to have a little bit more of that over the next year, and probably not helped by the government, which are running scared of the electorate at the moment a little bit. So they're developing policies which are seeking to protect Middle England constituencies. They've got a revolting backbench, a backbench full of revolting whatever you know what I mean, and they are pandering to that backbench and developing policies which will cut the supply of new housing sites through planning. So we're in for an interesting period of probably inertia up to the next election, whenever that may be. So
I totally agree with you. The sort of economics of things are coming. I think it's getting a little bit worse. Everybody I'm talking to, it seems to be that little bit harder again. Thanks ever so much for that, Dave. I'm just going to go over to you, Geoff. Obviously, you do the circuit, professional speaker at events. So how is your trade at the moment? How's that going? Are things picked up now?
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I mean, businesses are kind of weird. I mean, we were discussing before we came on this political correctness thing and so on, and the whole kind of bit. I've just done a job now for this company. They were all sort of under 12 years old, and their average salary is something like 3 million a year or something. And I said to one of these children, "Where's your head office?" And they just looked at me like I was mad. Head office? What head office? We're like everywhere. It's like that, like I had the Sixth Sense. Where are you? We're everywhere. And I said, have you got a boss? No, they haven't got a boss. They all work from home. And the amount of money they make is just astonishing. They're involved in money and IT and money, and a combination of the two of them. And I'm seeing this. If you've ever read that book, The Black Swan, which is really difficult to read, and the bloke's a big head, but he talks about scalability, and that's what it's about now. He argues that if you're a brain surgeon or a prostitute, you've got to be there with your customer. So you can only get so rich. But if you can find a business that's scalable, in other words, like the writer of Harry Potter, she doesn't have to be there every time the customer gives her money. And and when you get to things like software, where you find some little bit of a folderol that everybody has on their computer, like Office or Word, if everybody in the world gives you 700 quid every year or whatever it is, you get disproportionately rich. That's the point. And in the end, you end up with people who have so much money, they have influence. And then there's the rest of us. So, you kind of say, well, an Aston Martin is £500,000. Who's got that sort of money? Well, they could buy 6 out of their Christmas bonus, just like that. And that's their underlings. The people who own these companies literally can buy political influence. And it's quite scary, really. But on the positive side with my business, what I'm finding is with all these virtual business and hybrid business, that there is people sailing off in all sorts of different directions. So they have to bring them together to try, it's not the annual conference of a building society or something. It's actually gathering the disparate people you employ together in one place and explaining what it is you're trying to do. An absolute classic that happened to me before I hand back to the rest of you. I had a boss friend of mine, chief executive, absolutely fulminating, and I laughed because he'd had this load of interviews for somebody for this really super job. And he wanted somebody new, kind of newly qualified out of university, so young. And this one kid really kind of got him. And he wrote to him and said, "You really impressed me. I'd like you to come back for a second interview. I think you've got it." The kid wrote back, "So, well, I didn't like you and I'm not coming to work for you." And he was absolutely enraged. And the kid said, "Look, you were interviewing me, but I was interviewing you, and I don't like you, and I don't want to work for you." and it's like, yeah, that's the way it is now. Yeah, if people don't have to work for you, they don't have to like you, and they didn't. So I'm doing a lot of work now trying to pull groups from a company together and get them to realize what direction the business is going in, to collaborate, to get more involved and to understand what's going on. Because people are becoming contractors. They're just contracting from their home office, and they're not actually engaged in the ambitions of the business.
No, I think you really hit the nail on the head there, which is a very nice lead onto Amanda, actually, because Amanda employs 1,400 people. Part of that is you employ an awful lot of young people as well, don't you, Amanda?
We do. We give more. We give McDonald's as a global brand gives more people their first job than any other business in the world, and with that comes the responsibility of taking on, lots of young people and dealing with that transition from school to work, and it does cause problems, And we look back at our demographic of maybe a few years ago when we had a lot more full-time people and people who were a bit older. And the demographic now is a much greater percentage of, under 18, under 20. And with that, you have the piece of communication, how to continually engage, because Geoff's right, they can just pivot. And there's lots of jobs out there. So I think one of the things that you have to, it's interesting, the communication piece and your tone of voice and just people understanding what your culture is. I mean, if we kind of feel if you can't say what's your culture, you haven't really got one. And I have seen, though, even we've been doing this for 6 years, so actually not that long, but I've seen a difference in terms of engagement, in terms of what the younger generation wants, because the 17-year-olds now are not the same as the sort of 25-year-olds now. They can see a difference. And they are more interested in activism or doing the right thing. They are, I think, a lot of them more public spirited, wanting to help each other, kinda. I would definitely say I look back at my generation, which is a little bit more dog-eat-dog, and can you be a yuppie and how much money can you make and all that kind of thing. Whereas in our business, I think there's a lot of people who want to do things. So it's quite interesting to observe. And I think part of it is just reacting to that and trying to encourage people to be part of something. So the difficulty is when you've got that many people, the communication channels and how you keep up that engagement and how you don't bore people and turn people off, but also are present enough so they do, as Geoff said, know that they have a boss and that there is a culture. But there's definitely bosses in our business.
Can I just quickly go to the other parts of the business? Because obviously you ran the 5 stores in Gloucester, right around the city. So if you ever go into a McDonald's in Gloucester, it's Amanda and Paul that own it and run them, by the way. And then you took the decision to buy 2 in Cheltenham and 1 in Stroud.
Yeah.
Huge investment and also opportunity. How's that gone for you? Was it difficult to take over someone else's franchise?
Has it been difficult? I wouldn't use the word difficult. It's definitely been challenging. That was in September, so it's not been that long. Lots of things have been a lot easier than we anticipated. There's definitely been a feeling, a Christmas party and stuff, bringing people together. The last franchisee, because of the way it was put together, there was some businesses in Swindon, some are a bigger geographic area. We now feel we've got Gloucestershire. So in terms of if you're doing an event, and we're talking about bringing people together, or if you're organising something, it makes it a lot easier. So again, that communication and engagement piece is easier. But there is now another 8 sites, and there are that many more people. And, McDonald's build their own talent. We don't bring people in from outside. Every person you see in the business in a white shirt who's a manager has started off, including Paul, on the shop floor. And that takes time. And I think that's one of the things you just have to go, let's take some time. Everything isn't decided in a day. Be patient. The majority of people are really working and trying hard. Is there frustrations? Yes, of course. But it's the attitude, as you say, of just getting on board and going, that's it. So, yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Fantastic for all that. Thank you ever so much. Simon, let's go over to you. Love to know about. I'm going to try and build up the screen again because I was totally incompetent earlier. Okay, so I'll see if I can share it
Quite
again.
good. It makes your arm disappear, which is quite entertaining. Oh, gone.
There we go. So I'm just going to move that a little bit over there. So Simon, tell us all about your business, please. So this is obviously some of the product that you sell. It's you and your wife that run the company.
Yeah, so that's one of our best ever selling products called the Storm leggings. So basically, Sarah da Silva is a women's activewear brand which we started in 2015. We came up with we called it after my wife's name, Sarah da Silva. So Sarah is from Brazil, São Paulo originally, and because it's quite a long extended story, but I'll try and pare it down a little bit to make it kind of digestible. So basically, Sarah she was a bikini competitor for about a year, and she did quite well in it. And obviously doing a lot of training, she needed to wear sportswear in the gym. So her mum used to send her Brazilian leggings all the way from São Paulo over to Ireland, and because Brazilian has a long history of making activewear. So to earn a little bit extra money on the side, Sarah started to sell them on a Facebook group, and she used her success in the bikini arena to build up a network. And that's kind of in essence how it started, as in bringing the product to market. Fast forward a couple of years later, we moved to the United Kingdom. I started work with Gloucester Rugby Club, and I didn't see myself going any further in the rugby industry, and Sarah was doing a little bit of part-time work on the side and selling the leggings, and we decided, because there was a market at the time, that we would turn it into a real business. So we needed to come up with originally we were buying wholesale leggings and selling them. There was no brand. So we were selling all these leggings, and we were getting a lot of people posting on Facebook and referrals. So we said we need to put our mark on these products because they're out there and nobody knows who's selling them. So we said, right, we need to create a brand. So we've been doing that ever since. So we're a direct-to-consumer brand. We don't have any bricks and mortar presence. We've got customers all over Ireland, the United Kingdom, and at this stage, I've lost count of how many different collections and leggings and stuff that we've sold. But we built the business because we're in the fashion world, which is probably one of the most difficult businesses you could ever try and enter into, because fashion is changes like the wind, and it's a very upfront capital heavy business. We designed a product which we still sell to this day, at the very beginning of the business, called the Black Panther, which we built our name on, which we hope to grow into the future. It's kind of like Coca-Cola or McDonald's, and the Big Mac is like that. That product is there all the time. People just want convenience. They don't want things to change. So we built that type of product, and people just keep coming back for it all the time. So that's kind of what we do. In terms of moving forward as a business, obviously we're trying to expand and grow. It's very, very difficult at the moment, the climate. Our turnover has down since 2020 a little bit because of the whole COVID and the boom in online digital businesses. So we're just trying to weather the storm at the moment and get through, and keep focused on our goals for future success. I think moving forward, we have to have a presence in bricks and mortars, and potentially with some big aggregators, the likes of Marks and Spencers have just launched a new sideline, a brand within a brand where they aggregate activewear. So something like that, along the lines of that, or getting into the likes of a John Lewis or something like that moving forward, so that we get the visibility and the distribution that we need to survive as a business. But I suppose our future visions will be to be like a success, something like Super Dry or Hera Clothing in Cheltenham, or maybe Holland and Cooper is another success story. So that's kind of our long-term helicopter view kind of vision, if you like. So
okay, no, thanks ever so much for that. Can I just quickly ask you, how much does a set retail for?
The Black Panther retails for £54.99.
Okay, all right. Just
quite competitively priced.
Yeah.
Do you want? Are you interested in a pair, Mark?
I'm sure I'd look good in it. I'm sure I put a sock down the front.
It's all right. After, don't worry, that's no problem.
Yeah. That goes nice here with Dave. Thanks ever so much for that, Dave. You're obviously a bit of a retail guru yourself and a high street expert. Are we seeing a change now as a high street coming back?
I mean, it's ever changing, isn't it? And I mean, one of the articles in the Daily Express was Waitrose faces oldie onslaught. So it is continuing to change. Different areas have bounced back at different speeds. Cheltenham has bounced back pretty quickly. Other areas in the county more slowly. Properties are still being let. We're still seeing that the change of use within the high street, and the move away from retail being its primary function, and that must continue, and will continue in the coming years until we find that happy equilibrium with much smaller retail centres functioning in a very different way. But we still have some way to go, I think.
And what about the sort of planning side of is there the investment there in the sort of property, the commercial side of things?
Well, there's certainly I think landlords have at last woken up to the fact that they need to be more proactive with their properties, and certainly when voids occur, to look at future-proofing them a little bit more. So, retaining where possible, retail or a retail type activity at ground floor level, but look at how they use the upper floors more effectively. So that is definitely starting to happen. And there's some good stuff around that arena. We're seeing quite a lot of Airbnb activity, health coming back into town centres. But and planning is in that arena fairly relaxed. I think the government have done well in opening up permitted development for a range of different uses on the high street. So planning tends not to be the blocker. It tends to be the other factors. Perhaps listed buildings in our historic cores are quite a constraint, and obviously we're now going to see a further constraint with the efficiency of properties. So that is going to start to bite as the coming year comes on.
Now, Evans Jones are well known, obviously, in the hotel market as well, isn't it? Has that come back now? Has that bounced back?
Yeah, so we project manage for Travelodge, so deliver numerous travel lodges across the country. It fell off a cliff during COVID. They stopped. Everyone else stopped. The issue we've had with hoteliers is the cost of building. So it's a very clear model. They know exactly what they can sell their rooms for, what their occupancy rates are, etc., etc. And if build costs are too high in an area, then that hits viability. Now, what we are seeing with build costs we're seeing them start to drop now. Builders are becoming slightly hungrier. So, we've had a period where, contractors haven't needed to go out and look for work for quite a considerable period now. That is starting to change, and that will drive costs down. So, my expectation is that build cost inflation will fall below, well below general inflation rates, and things will get more affordable. So that is going to open up some of those schemes that perhaps have not been viable through construction costs. So, but certainly, Travelodge have come back to market and are, supporting schemes again.
Okay, that's good to hear as well. Thanks ever so much for that. Well, we're kind of running out of time, guys. We've gone over time actually already, but let's quickly go through the stories that you picked out on this week's Punchline. So we'll start with you, Geoff. What's the story from this week's Punch, please?
Well, again, this Amazon thing, I did, as you know, I do sort of suicide TV in the middle of the night, and I did a big piece on Amazon for the BBC. Well, it was on distribution. In fact, we got chased by the security guards of Marks and Spencer's when we tried to film there. But what we looked at was something like, I think it was a 2 million square foot warehouse in the East Midlands for Amazon. And again, they built it, but they weren't sure whether they were going to use it. They were going to use it for selling canoes, sailing boats and cars, big things. And it had its own climate in there. It was so vast. And again, it's what, this one of the Gloucester one, just building it and then not using it is just, incredible economics of scale. And funnily enough, and taking what David said, which was fascinating, I've realized I've stopped using Amazon as much as I used to. I've started ambling into town and buying things because with the couriers being more and more unreliable and the prices are starting to go up, I wonder if we will just go back to going into shops again. I mean, what is behind Amazon's decision in Gloucester? Do you know?
No, we don't know actually. The statement that we got from them was that the marketplace has changed and they're looking to redistribute, to let it out basically. I mean, it's a huge site. I went down there, we watched it being built. We broke that exclusive story when it first started being built, and we broke the exclusive story that they're going to mothball it. Anyway, thanks ever so much for that, Geoff. I'm going to go back over to Amanda. What have you picked out, Amanda?
I picked out the story about the Gloucester tech company that are on Southgate Street, which I just thought was a really nice, feel-good story. So they won a Business Innovation Award, and I think there was some award ceremony. They won it. And I love the way they're kind of using they're developing software and helping businesses, but as part of that, on the kind of sideline as a side hustle, are also being able to help other charities and either doing it for free or at a massively reduced rate, which is then in turn helping the charities have their own traction. Also, that's a feel good, so they're winning new business because they're doing it. And I really like that attitude of like, we can be a business, but you can also have a conscience. And the fact that it's on Southgate and they won the award, seems quite young, seemed quite hungry. And I was just like, yeah, it ties in with all the kind of cyber stuff that's going on. So I thought that was a really nice story, actually. I love that.
Really nice, positive story just down the road from you. I'm sure they buy lots of burgers. So who knows? Simon, what have you picked out from this week's Punchline, please?
Something from my industry. So it's launch of Umbro Garments incorporating, I hope I say this right, Versarian's graphene wear. So I just thought it was a very interesting story. A local company have been picked up by Umbro, and they're going to incorporate their technology, their graphene technology, in their new, so basically base layer training technology kind of clothing. So I thought that was a fantastic achievement by a local company to be working with such a huge brand such as Umbro, and it's nice to like it's such a similar industry to myself. That just caught my eye. And again, I just think Gloucestershire as a whole is such an amazing place. The amount of technology and businesses that are in this local area that have achieved such great success, I just think it's another great success story because I love to see other businesses doing well.
And they're also got to deal with Superdry as well. They formulate some stuff with Superdry They've got a deal with a footwear company, and I don't know if you know, but they actually put graphene into concrete, and what they're trying to do there is to eliminate 30% of the energy used in making concrete. Vasarian is a world-beating engineering company, and it's just fantastic. But they need a break now. They're one of those disruptors that you just need to make a successful product. But anyway, thanks ever so much for that, Simon. David, what have you picked up for this week's punchline?
I think it's 101 Northgate Street and the Gloucester City Home site. I'm passionate about seeing, the resurgence of Gloucester and Gloucester City, and what's happening at the Forum is amazing. And I think schemes like this, I first looked at this site probably 15 or 20 years ago, and it's laid vacant in the intervening period and probably not been viable to build. But the likes of the Forum and the money that's been pumped into there is giving other developers confidence that they can build and people will buy or let. So having seen a site that has been vacant for so many years come forward is just testament to where you do pump prime a city with inward investment in such as the Forum, that you do get that outflow of good feeling and invest in further inward investment.
No, I totally agree. And just as a back to that story as well, 95% of all the businesses used in and supplier for aqua construction who built it all come from the local that completely buy all their stuff locally, which I think is a real testament to the sort of company as well, and what you're saying there. My story of the week actually has to be Forest Green Rovers, and the start that they've actually started work on their new stadium on Junction 13. Very, very exciting, and I think it's going to put Gloucester further on the map. It really is an exciting project. So it's great to see that up and running as well. And unfortunately, that's all we've got time for. I'd just like to thank our fantastic panel of guests for taking the time out. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Hazelwood's Accountants and Business Advisors. And finally, I'd like to thank you all for watching the show. If you like the show, please like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you again next week. Thanks for joining Punchline Talks. Bye.
Thank you.